So life doesn't have to be perfect. The videos don't have to be perfect. Your content that you put out doesn't have to be perfect. The blog you post, whatever it is you're doing, doesn't have to be perfect. You just have to be willing to step into a level of discomfort and just share. Let's get real for a minute. This is like the fifth time I've started a video. I am in the middle of just getting some content creation done this week, and today I wanted to knock out quite a few videos. I have started and stopped about 4 different topics. Each time I got into it, it just didn't feel right. And so I thought, man, immediately my brain said, maybe this isn't for me. Maybe I shouldn't be recording today. Maybe I'm just too tired. Whatever excuses they were, and so then I had to stop and I had to think, well, maybe that's just not the message I'm supposed to put out today. Maybe what I'm supposed to be talking about are the struggles that I'm dealing with and the challenges when it comes to content creation and consistency. If you look back at my life and my progression of my growth, what has really held myself back is me. And the reason why, and the areas that I've held myself back in, are in my consistency. Something got a little hard or it just didn't feel aligned. And I just kind of got this idea in my head that if I just don't feel like it, I won't do it. But that's not what's going to get you or me to the next level. You have to show up sometimes when it's uncomfortable. And we have to be able to shift our perspective. We have to be able to shift our perspective on what's happening in the moment. So instead of just latching on to, oh, it's not the time for me to be recording that content, maybe it's not the time for me to record that content. What's a different message I can share? Because I committed to sitting down here. I committed to sharing something today. So what is that? Maybe it's the challenges that we face and how we self sabotage. Maybe it's reflecting on my initial need to just pull back because it got a little more difficult than I would like. My biggest thing in life is I don't like inconvenience. If it's going to be an inconvenience for me, I don't want to do it. I can do it. I know I can. I've done a lot of really hard things in life. And so this is something that I've had to repeatedly look at over and over and over in my business is when is the inconvenience? When do I decide that I'm going to push through? And when do I decide if I'm going to pull back? And really watching for those patterns, because patterns are what show up in our business. The patterns that we oftentimes are not willing to look at or we sugarcoat and think that it's something that is supportive for us. Those patterns are what we need to be aware of, because those patterns are the things that really pull us back from that next level of success, from really doubling down on what we need to do, that really keep us in this safe, familiar zone that we're so used to. So life doesn't have to be perfect. The videos don't have to be perfect. Your content that you put out doesn't have to be perfect. The blog you post, whatever it is you're doing, doesn't have to be perfect. You just have to be willing to step into a level of discomfort and just share. You have to be able to be a little more vulnerable than you're used to. You have to be able to do these things not just by, gritting your teeth and bearing it, but by actually allowing yourself to access a space within you that maybe you haven't before, that's a little more vulnerable, that allows you to show up a little more imperfectly because you're not judging yourself. So really an older version and versions of others, like people I work with, in that moment of not being able to find that clarity on what I wanted to say, that would bring a lot of judgment in the past that I wasn't good enough. Oh, great, here we go again. Here's another story of Kayla not being able to do what she wanted to do because she's not smart enough or good enough or capable enough. And I could have doubled down on that story today and just moved on and sugarcoated it and pretend and made it into something it wasn't. If I would have latched onto that story and really jumped on that train and allowed it to go, it would really create some ruffles in my business. My business wouldn't be able to grow because I'm not able to grow. And so when we notice those patterns, I immediately knew that that's a pattern that I have to not continue and to not be consistent. And then just this idea that waiting for people to know if I'm not good enough. Now that story is not present for me anymore. I don't walk around thinking I'm not good enough. I really step into the fact that I am in lots of different areas of my life, actually all areas of my life. But the old residual habits that came from that belief that I created about myself, those are the things that derail me, right? So my natural instinct is to quit. And so if we are not aware of these patterns, we will continue to derail ourselves. We won't access this space of vulnerability where we show up and we move through habits or conditioning in real time on social media, in our work, with our clients, wherever you are doing this. If you're not actually allowing yourself this space to reflect and see, why am I doing these things? Why do I want to quit? What is it that I want to do? And how can I actually step into the version of myself I want to be right now? Then I promise you'll keep continuing these patterns. You'll keep going down these paths. And it's really important to recognize that there is a pivot, right? If you have a plan and it's not going well, do something else. Not running away, but just allowing yourself to say, that's not working right now. What could work? That's what the most successful people do. They pivot. They said, that's not it today, or that's not working ever. Now what? Now what can I do? Now what can I share? Now what does this look like? Now what can I create? Right? That's what we have to get into. That's the belief in ourselves that we have to get into, that you are always capable and you're always able to pivot and you're always able to provide what needs to be provided. And it doesn't have to be perfect. And it doesn't have to be this grand, elaborate aspect, or, every single keyword has to be right, or all these taglines and all these different things. That you can just show up as you, and people will be attracted to that. People will be drawn to that vulnerability. They'll be drawn to that openness. When things aren't working out and you default back to not moving forward, not staying consistent, pulling yourself back, contracting, you can just say, why am I doing this? What do I want to do instead? What does this look like? What is actually needing to be seen right now? And so for me, it was just turning the camera on and starting to talk about my experience. Whether this relates to anyone or not, that's okay. I don't need it to. I just needed to set into what was real and true for me right now. And that was not going through some of the topics I had today. It was going through this aspect of, I'm not perfect. Sometimes I don't want to do the things that I have in front of me, but my camera's set up, my lights are set up, everything is set up to do this today. So I made a commitment to myself. I'm going to pump out some content and I'm going to share with you. And it doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be the most profound thing that you've ever heard, but it is going to be something. I am going to follow that commitment to myself. I am going to keep those promises to myself, and I'm going to keep putting it out. And the more you do that, the more you show up for yourself, the more you trust yourself. And it's okay to do things that are uncomfortable and not familiar, and always be aware of when you're feeling contracted and how you can shift that and show up and still make magic.